A Home Office pathologist tonight confirmed that a Bristol man found dead in his flat had been stabbed several times and battered over the head with a blunt instrument. A post-mortem was carried out on 38-year-old Keith Burgess, whose body was discovered yesterday. Police have been carrying out a detailed search near his ground-floor flat in Duchess Road in Clifton. Mr. Burgess was unmarried and worked as a British Rail steward. Murder Squad detectives are investigating possible homosexual links with the killing.
Investigating the murder of railway steward Keith Burgess have released an artist's impression of a man they want to trace. The man, described as being in his 20s, was seen to leave Mr. Burgess's flat at around 12:45 on Sunday afternoon. Detectives think he must have been the last person to see the 38-year-old homosexual alive. He was stabbed and battered to death in his Clifton flat. Today, forensic experts were still searching for clues. Overnight rain is likely to bring... Statistics clearly show, in the vast majority of cases, murder is committed by someone known to the victim. And police feel that this is likely to prove true in this case. Keith Burgess was 39 years old, unmarried, and he'd been living in the Clifton area of Bristol for the past 4 years. And it's there, shortly before Christmas, that our reconstruction takes place. Keith Burgess had close ties with his local church, All Saints in Clifton. He was often a server at Mass. He seems to have been well liked by everyone who knew him. Keith worked for British Rail as a steward, mostly on intercity services between London and the southwest. And because he travelled so much, he had acquaintances in many parts of the country.
Keith was a lovely man. I don't think many people who've come across him will ever met anybody who was quite that easy to get on with. Keith was amazingly charming, easygoing person, very efficient at his job. Just generally a pleasure to know. I've never known anybody have a bad word to say about him, and certainly none of the customers. Great knack at putting people at their ease, entertaining people. Have a drink. Have another drink.
Drinks?
Orange juice, please.
Orange juice? I need orange juice. You look like the kind of lady like a gin and tonic.
Well, I knew he was gay, but it didn't really matter at all because the guy's too nice for anything to matter.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Teas, coffees? Okay, teas, coffees, anybody for tea?
Sunday, the 17th of December. It was the last Sunday before Christmas weekend. Keith nearly always went to Mass on Sundays when he wasn't working. In fact, he'd taken sick leave for the past week, but he was due back on duty that afternoon.
Hello, Keith. How are you this morning?
Oh, a bit tired. Been under the weather with the flu.
Are you not over that flu yet?
Terrible, isn't it? But I'm back to work today.
Got to go to work this afternoon?
Yeah, this afternoon. Yes.
Never let you lot rest.
See you Friday, I'll be certain.
Oh, you're on that? That's jolly good. OK, take care.
Bye now.
God bless. Look after yourself.
Bye, Betty.
Hello, Keith. Are you going home now?
Well, I'm going to pop in for a quick drink at the pub. Do you want to come?
Oh, no, another time, perhaps.
Okay,
Yes. See you later. Yes, bye.
I must go now as well.
All right, goodbye.
It was about 12:15 when Keith walked round the corner to the pub, as he often did after church. He was there for less than half an hour.
How your plans for today?
Yeah.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
No one actually remembers seeing Keith leave the pub, but it was around 20 to 1 when he started off on the short walk to his home in Duchess Road. It would have been just around this time that a BBC producer noticed a man on the steps leading from Keith's basement flat. He was wearing a blue and white woolen hat and carrying 2 bags, one white and one green, possibly a Marks and Spencer bag. The man was conspicuous for his most peculiar behaviour. He very nervously started trying to hide his face. Once at the corner of Duchess Road and All Saints Road, he seemed to stop and wait. Mrs. Betty Taylor lives in the ground floor flat above Keith's.
That Sunday lunchtime, she was at home with a friend, grooming her dog.
Good girl now, aren't you? Now keep still, just for a little bit longer.
She's nearly dry now.
Yes. That must be Keith. I'll give him those presents.
All right. I'll see you in a minute.
Mrs. Taylor had known Keith for 10 years through the church, and they were close friends. She used to look after his flat for him whenever he was away. There was a connecting staircase between their flats.
Keith? Where are you?
Hello, Betty.
I brought these presents that were left for you.
Thank you.
I can't stay. I got Janet upstairs. You expecting anybody?
No, I'm just off to work.
Okay then. Cheerio.
Hello. Come in.
Mrs. Taylor didn't see who was at the door, but she had the impression that it was someone Keith knew.
Just get under here. That's it.
Just a little bit on the back.
Yeah.
About half an hour later, she heard Keith's front door slam.
Finished. You're very good. Yes. That must be Keith going. Is that him coming up the stairs?
No.
He must be packing his things still. Now,
Keith was due to start work on the 2 o'clock train from Bristol to London. Staff delayed the train for 3 minutes, waiting for Keith to arrive. The train departed without him. Later that Sunday afternoon, Keith Burgess was found dead in his flat. He'd been beaten and stabbed. And the date, Sunday the 17th of December. Mr. Barry Stone, that man in the blue and white hat, must surely be the person who killed Keith Burgess.
I think there's little doubt that that's right. And of course, we are extremely anxious to identify just who he is.
Now, theft wasn't the motive, but did Keith, in fact, have any enemies, as far as you know?
Well, he was an extremely sociable person. He had friends and acquaintances throughout the country. He was homosexual. His acquaintances and friends were amongst the homosexual communities. He spent the majority of his time in gay clubs and also public houses, not only in Bristol, but elsewhere. He was very outgoing, and I feel confident that if there was ill feeling between him and someone else, then he would have told one of his acquaintances or his friends, and I would appeal to that person to come forward and get that information to us.
He did spend a lot of time in bars, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Around Bristol and various areas.
Yes, certainly London was another place, but he was travelling from as far afield as Penzance to Dundee.
And as you say, he was a very open, chatty person, so if there had been any problems in his life, he could well have perhaps discussed it with one of the people he met.
I feel sure that he would have shared that information with someone else, and I think that person would be doing everyone a favour if they came to us with that information.
In fact, you know that he received 3 significant phone calls during the last week before his death.
Yes, he did, and we're confident that those phone calls were made by the same person. There was one phone call during the early hours of the Tuesday prior to his death. There were 2 phone calls between 6 and 9 p.m. on the Wednesday prior to his death. We'd like to speak to the person who made those phone calls. It is, of course, quite possible that they are not related to his murder at all, but we would like to speak to that person. There is some suggestion that the subject of the phone calls was, in fact, an argument.
And anyone who does wish to come forward who knew Keith will be guaranteed discretion from you.
The gay community in Bristol have been quite complimentary about the manner in which we've dealt with this inquiry, and we would guarantee anyone absolute discretion.
Now, since we made our reconstruction there, another witness has come forward with a new clue.
Yes, we know that on Friday the 15th, that was 2 days before the murder, he was in the Marble Arch area of London where he had lunch with someone. We'd like to speak to that person, and also anybody else who saw him in London on that day.
Right. You also believe that 2 significant articles may be missing now from Keith's flat.
Yes, we know that the week previous to his death, certainly there was a file of facts in the flat and also an album of photographs. Now, the album of photographs may indeed belong to someone else and not Keith Burgess. Certainly neither item was there at the time of his death, when we searched the premises, and we're extremely anxious to trace both items.
But both those items could hold vital clues.
They could indeed.
Well, Mr. Stone, thank you very much indeed. If you have any idea, first of all, who that man in the woolen hat might be, or if you can shed any light at all on who might have wanted to kill Keith, please do let us know. Your call will be treated with absolute discretion. You can speak to Detective Superintendent Stone or to a BBC researcher here if you prefer, or you can ring Mr. Stone's colleagues at the King's Western Incident Room in Bristol on 0272 267 870. That's 0272, the code for Bristol, 267 870.